Welcome to Whiskey Shenanigans. I'm your host, Randy Warren. Whiskey Shenanigans, where we help our listeners experience the world of whiskey, every aspect of life, as if it was accompanied by a glass of bourbon. The sports world on whiskey. Basically every part of life on whiskey. Whiskey Shenanigans is about getting exclusive interviews from Bourbon Row in Kentucky, where we can learn about the secrets that make our favorite bourbons unique. We will get inside the hearts and minds of many distillers and help you understand what and how they are achieving it. Whiskey Shenanigans is about going beyond boring podcasts featuring just tastings. Heck, what do you get out of that anyway? It's about bringing on guests and experiencing the entire world through whiskey. But be warned, if you're diving in and you want to participate in these riveting discussions, you will need to grab a glass or a dram and be prepared to be entertained. Hey there again, Whiskey Shenanigans fans. This is Randy Warren, your host, and today we are really happy and very proud to have with us a member of the Bourbon Hall of Fame, Steve Nally. And Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't at least give a few minutes to your significant background that you have. I mean, you know, you've been in this industry for a very long time. I think you started at Maker's Mark, is that right? And how long did you work there? And did you work with Sam?
I did start at Maker's Mark. I started back in 1972. I was there for 32 years. I started with Sam Cecil. He was plant manager at the time, and he was a wonderful guy to work with.
Wow. And 32 years you were there.
Correct. Yeah.
You became master distiller at some point. How did that happen?
Well, I attribute my first 17 years as my schooling years. You know, that's where I learned. I actually worked every job at the facility, learned from the ground up. I was night watchman, flunky, you know, repaired machinery, ran all the operations, as I said. So I actually learned every position down there from the ground up. So in 1988, the distiller retired and they asked me to assume the role. So I assumed that role, did that part of it for the next 15 years. And they were bought out by some other companies. And they became a little bit too corporate for me. So when some of the benefits changed, I decided that it wasn't a good fit for me anymore. So I left that and moved on.
Wow, that's a big change. But while you were there, you and Sam worked on some yeast cultures, which is not something that we usually talk a whole heck of a lot about, because I, for one, and I don't think a lot of our listeners really understand it. So, but you're a chemical engineer, and maybe you could briefly explain to us why that's important.
Well, it's important in several different aspects. You know, yeast is a very, very proprietary part of the production in flavor and sustainability and yield and all of that. And the yeast strain that Maker's Mark had, or still has actually, was acquired from some of T.W. Samuel's distilling friends, and they brought that on board, and it was very, very prized part of their operation. And we kept culturing or growing that as through the years. And we to tell you a little bit of a story about that, we had the operation. It was really kind of a separate operation in one part of the distillery. And there was a yeast, or really a facility that grew yeast that came in down there one time. They said, you know, the part of the way you preserve your yeast is not really as sterile as we think it should be. So they offered to take a slat of that yeast and freeze dry and keep it in case something happened to our part of the process that we lost ours. So they did, and probably about a year or a year and a half later, they came back, said, something happened to our slats, so we need another one taken and keep it. And they actually did this twice. They were the professionals that knew how to preserve that, but they lost theirs twice. We never did lose ours. We kept ours preserved and in good shape. And they actually said during that process that ours was one of the most pure cultures of yeast that they had ever seen, because we had kept it so clean and pure during the whole process. So, and they still today have that same culture of yeast that they started with back in 1953.
Wow. And why does it make such a difference? What's the key to the yeast?
Well, it's the culture of yeast that you have, that you keep the same flavor profile, you keep the same strain of yeast going all the time, that you keep that, Maker's Mark was very, very persistent in growing that yeast and to keep that same flavor profile in there. And if they changed the least little bit about that yeast culture, their flavor profile, their taste would have changed drastically. So it was very, very precise that, if they had gotten a foreign yeast in there or foreign bacteria into their culture, then it would change the whole flavor and taste of Maker's Mark altogether. So it's very, very beneficial to the company and precise that you keep that. And I always told everybody, I said, when I was operator in the yeast room, we sterilized everything in there except my hands. If the skin was stayed on, they probably would sterilize them. But it's just such a sterile environment to keep all the foreign bacteria out of that environment.
Wow. And how do you suppose they landed on that particular strain of yeast back in 1958, I think you said?
53 was the year, but it was all of the distilleries were just such, they're pretty much family oriented, all distilleries. And back in those days, there was only about 8 or 9 major distillery companies. And T.W. Samuels knew almost all of them. So he connected with one of the operators or the owners of that distillery that he got the culture from and asked for a sample of it. And they gave it to him, and he just kept culturing from that one strain and growing his own yeast once he got that. But he just liked the flavor that gave, and then he switched from, I think they were producing a rye product, and he switched over to his wheat product. So it wasn't like he copied the flavor that they had, but he took the benefits of the culture of yeast and switched over to a wheat recipe and made his own flavor profile.
And wheat brings its own challenges, right? In terms of cooking the wheat.
Oh, yes. You're getting the conversion of the starches out of the wheat, and then you get, for instance, if you take a wheat bread and a rye bread, it's the total different flavor that comes through from the wheat grain itself.
And you have to, it's a little bit tricky to keep the right temperature, yeah?
Oh, yeah. To get the breakdown of the grain, to get the full sugars converted from the starches in the grains, is if you overcook it, you break them down too much toward they glutenize and you don't get all the benefits. You undercook it, you don't get all of the starches broke down. So it's a very precise conversion to get everything broke down where you get the full benefit of the grain itself.
Wow. And, while you were at Makers, before we move on to Wyoming whiskey, but while you were at Makers, you oversaw the expansion, dramatic expansion of that distillery from something like 32 barrels a week to what? Thousands?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I think they do like 1,300 or 1,500 a day now down there. But yeah, I actually was involved in the very first. If you have ever been to Maker's Mark and have seen the wood vats that are in the first room that you go into, when I first went down there, we were only using 4 of the 8 wood vats that's in that room. And then we started using all 8 of them. And then if you look down the hallway to the right in that room, if you can go down that hallway, there's a bunch of stainless steel fermenters. And if I'm not mistaken, somebody said there's about 90 to 100 fermenters in the company down there now. So they've really expanded tremendously. But the one still that you see, we put in the second still, which mirrored the first one, which was one the expansion, and then now they have 3 of them. So I was involved in the first expansion to add the fermenters to keep the still running 24/7. And then the second still went in to run 2 stills 24/7. So I was involved in that part of it.
Wow, that's quite a history. And so eventually, though, you just, like you said, the benefits changed, this and that. It became a little bit too corporate, and that's probably is somewhat of a result of their success. Because you were successful and they were successful, it's kind of like, all right, well, now we can't change anything. The public likes what we're producing. This thing that we're making here is very popular. We need to be consistent, and we need to make it over and over and over again. And it becomes, I don't know, you can't experiment as much, maybe a little too repetitive. And so you decided to move on to Wyoming whiskey for a new challenge. What was that all about? I mean, that's a huge change. You moved from Kentucky to Wyoming, right?
Oh, it was really a big change. I had no idea when I took that on that it was going to be as major as it was. I went to Wyoming. Kentucky's about 700-800 feet elevation. You go to Wyoming, that's 4,200 feet elevation. So you get that change. The boiling point of water here is 212. The boiling point of water out there is 204. So you have different cook temperatures. You have different environmental conditions. The humidity out there is about 20%. Humidity out here is about 80% or more sometimes. So, you have totally different climatic differences, totally different atmospheric conditions. It's just everything out there. The starch content, because the growing season is different out there, the starch content is different in the grains. So, it's just a lot of variations. The aging of the product, the barrels are in a dry climate. So if you're not really careful, you'll lose more product because of the conditions out there. So the warehouses, I would actually go in the warehouse and take a hose or wet the warehouses down and keep the humidity inside the warehouse about 50-55% all the time. So that helped to keep some of the evaporation from happening within the warehouse. Things like that are just little things, but they really made a difference in what was happening. It was in the wintertime, you get 25, 30 below zero. In the summertime, you get 108, 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So you had extreme conditions, which made them really go into the barrels. The liquid got hot. In the wintertime, it really got cold, so it would expand and contract like it should, but you had extreme expansions and contractions. So you just had to kind of adjust to those environmental conditions from difference in Kentucky to out here.
And so you're going to end up with a different taste profile, right?
Yeah, you do. I mean, you get more barrel influence into the product, so you get more oaky, acidic flavor profiles into it quicker than you would out here. So that you have to account for. And there's some things you can kind of do to kind of level that out a little bit or to control it a little more. So it's just things you have to adjust, but you don't want to overdo it or underdo it. So you want to kind of mellow it out and get it to come out the way you want to.
Here's a tough question for you, because it's kind of like asking you which one of your children you like best. But which one did you like best? The taste of the makers or the taste of the Wyoming whiskey?
Well, there's an answer to that had to be waited on, and the owners of the company didn't want to wait on it. So when I left there, the taste of that was not very good because they got the idea they wanted to release the product at 3.5 years old. And it wasn't very good at that point because it wasn't fully matured. And after it became about 5.5 years old, it's really a good product. It's a little more acidic. It's a little more barrel influenced because of the influence of the extra heat putting it into the wood. The water conditions are a little different out there, so it made it just slightly different. The extra heat made it taste a little different. So I think Kentucky's is a little sweeter, a little milder than what is out there, but that's true with product made any place in the United States. Every spot has its own flavor profile. And not saying it's really bad, but it's just a little different.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. I mean, I've interviewed people from all over the United States and traveled around. And everywhere I travel to, I stop in a craft distillery or whatever here, there, and everywhere, and they're all different. They're all different. Some of them, it's like, well, that doesn't appeal to me, but somebody likes it. Or some of them I think are really good. But Kentucky is just, consistently good. It's the stuff made in Kentucky, the water, the temperature, all of these factors come together, and it really makes a great bourbon. I mean, obviously.
Well, and like I said, it's partly the water, the equipment that you use, and you take two stills made by the same company, supposedly made identical, and even put them here in this distillery here at Bardstown Bourbon, and they'll run a little bit different. The product coming out of them will taste slightly different. So part of it is the equipment. But again, I think the water and probably the climate is one of the big differences that influences. I consider the water right here in this area is we sit on a limestone shelf that's just slightly under the surface of the ground, and when that water goes through that limestone shelf, it filters out a lot of the minerals, almost all of the iron, and that really gives the water a little bit of sweetness. That limestone deposit kind of sweetens the water up. It takes all those minerals, or a lot of the minerals, iron and all, out of the water, and just gives it a very different taste than anything else. And then when you put the grains and all that are grown here into that, it just gives it a different taste than anybody else's.
I mean, I'm from Pennsylvania, and, I'm driving along in Pennsylvania. It never really occurred to me until I started talking to you distillers about the limestone. There's like limestone road here and there and everywhere. Like, there must be limestone in Pennsylvania. So they ought to be able to, have some nice filtered water too, no?
Well, it's just where it's located. I mean, there is limestone, and there's limestone in Wyoming, but for the most part, it's really deep in the ground. And if you look at the road bases or the roadways in Wyoming, most of those are made out of a type of a granite or a pea gravel, and that's readily available. And they mine that out. In Pennsylvania, the limestone mines are located at different areas, and they just have to truck it into where they're building the roads at. And maybe they have to dig deeper to get it or something, or maybe it's a different quality of limestone that they use to do it. I'm not sure what the type of limestone is that they use up there. So maybe it's a little more of a granite or a little more soapstone or a little different type of quality of limestone or something.
So now you're at your third distillery, major distillery here, Bardstown, and so how did that happen? Did you run into somebody from Bardstown, or did they, how did that work out?
Well, actually, I was still at Wyoming, and Peter Lofton, the founder of Bardstown Bourbon, contacted me, and it just so happened that that's the same time that the owners of Wyoming Whiskey was talking about releasing the product. And, we were having some disagreements, and I said, it's not ready to release yet. And Peter came to me and he said, I've got this idea that I want to start a distillery. And he said he'd been dabbling in the spirits industry a little bit. He had actually bought some barrels of product from a company, and he said, I can't really get anybody to go along with the idea I want to do. And so we talked some, and his approach to it was, normally when you start a new distillery up, you either produce vodka or gins or something like that to supplement your income to have a cash flow. Well, he had a totally different approach to it. He wanted to start custom producing for other companies that either did not have a distillery or had a small distillery that could not produce enough product to supply what they needed. And then on the visitor side, he wanted to start up something that was totally transparent. To do, on his terminology, it was to do a Napa Valley style experience for somebody coming in to where they could see what was going on, from glass in the vessels, cookers, the steel open top fermentations. All of that was to be totally transparent. If you go out in the warehouse, you actually open a barrel up and pull a sample out of the barrel and taste it right there on site.
Wow.
So with that type of transparency, our labels on our bottles, whatever's in them is actually got the mash bill, the recipes on the side of the bottle. So with, that kind of interested me that, to be that type of transparency and to custom produce had never been done before. Anybody that, like I said, either did not have a distillery or had something that they couldn't produce what they needed, they were actually buying from a broker before. That broker bought from the big companies, and then they were the middleman and sold to the labels or the producers. And they really didn't know what they were getting other than, this is a 21% rye, or this is a wheated bourbon, or what have you. Right. But they had no part of making it. Well, when they come here, we sit down with them from day one. They have a say in the grains they put in, the recipe, the yeast that's used, the barrels that's put in, everything about it. They have a say in, and they can even actually come here and work alongside my operators and be a part of producing their product. So it's very, very exciting to these companies to do that. And that's why we expanded as fast as we did to the level that we did it that quick. And I thought that was exciting, and that's why I signed on with him to be a part of that.
It is exciting. I actually tried a little bit of that myself. This bottle behind me here is my own recipe. It's from Flyover Whiskey in Nebraska, but where they got the corn and the rye and everything like that. Let me see, what is my mash bill? I put it right on the label too. I said 72% corn, 10% rye, 9% wheat, and 10% barley. So 4 grains.
So you had a full, right? Yeah.
Better than I thought it was going to turn out, to be honest with you. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, wow, this is pretty good. But I got to say, then I thought, well, at Maker's Mark, they put staves in the barrel and stuff like that. I'm like, what if I tried to finish this a little bit? And it became even more mellow and a little bit better and a little bit more vanilla-y and chocolatey. And I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. the stuff's falling off the shelf. Luckily,
Well,
nothing.
you front loaded it.
I did. I front loaded it. Where'd that bottle go? I don't know where it went. But it's around here somewhere. Oh, here it is. But it didn't break, thankfully.
Thank goodness it's a good quality bottle then.
It is a
There you
good quality
go.
bottle.
Yeah. Well, good. You didn't lose it.
Yeah, and that's similar to what you're describing, right? Where like you can be involved in the development of the product, and you can play with the flavor profile of it.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. You get to play with it, and working with all these companies that we work with, we have the privilege or the benefit of some companies come in and they'll say, this is exactly what I want. And then some of the others will come in and they say, well, I want a good product, but I have no idea how to get there. And we will work with them and, put ideas in their head or feed information to them and say, try this, try that. And then together we will come up with a recipe for them and develop things. And we've had several companies that we've helped develop the recipes for them. And we will give them as much information as they want or as little as they want. So we go any way they want to help develop their product.
Well, if they're working with you, I mean, they're going to end up with a pretty good product.
Well, I mean, it's just, it's a pleasure to be able to do that. And, if they have a product that they know they want, then that's fine. We'll make it for them. If they don't have any idea, we'll help them get where they want to go.
Right. That's fantastic. So how long have you been at Bardstown now?
I signed on with them in 2014. So when we first started this, there was 100 acres of cropland. There was not a building on here or nothing. I helped lay out the equipment, production equipment, and lay out the facility and everything. So I've been here since there was nothing here.
So you're growing the grains locally right there.
Well, as much as we can, the corn and the wheat is all within 100 miles of here. The rye and malted barley, that comes from more up north because it's not much of that grown around this area. It's more northern United States or Canada, and a little bit of the rye will come from overseas. But mostly, like I said, all the wheat and corn is grown within 100 miles of here.
Well, my next attempt to make my own or whatever, or play around with flavor profiles on whiskey, going to try to do some barrel picks. So Whiskey Shenanigans and Bourbon Plus magazine are teaming up, and maybe we'll knock on your door, Steve, and say, hey, we'd like to come, taste a couple barrels and put our Whiskey Shenanigans Bourbon Plus name on it. And we've got some pretty large restaurant groups out here on the East Coast that are willing to take all we can give them, that's like branded that way. And we're like, well, that makes sense, because if it was just for me and I was bringing this barrel in here and putting it on my shelf, first of all, it would fall off. Second of all, I'd never be able to drink it all, right?
Right. Well, we've got a pretty nice barrel program that you can log on, go online, or get in touch with me, and we'll get you set up with something. You can bring you and your group can come down, and we'll sit down and go through 4 or 5 barrels, and you can pick out the one you like best, and just make a day of to have a lunch here. And if you want to get into some bigger production, we'd be glad to help you out with that too. So we'll try to work with you and do anything we can.
That's amazing. That is really fun. It's really fun. I don't know half of what you know, and I couldn't possibly, but with your help, what we would make would turn out really well, I'm sure. So
well, we'd be glad to assist or do whatever we can to put you in the right direction and get you on the way. And like I said, we've got a really nice barrel program that we can get you fixed up with some 6-7-year-old product, get in the bottle for you, and have your name right there on the label.
Wow, that would be so cool. That'd be so cool. I think our whiskey shenanigan fans would love that. And selling whiskey is a whole nother. Making is one thing, selling it's a whole nother thing. All right.
Oh yeah.
So that's where the restaurant groups come in. It's like, okay, we can't really sell it. We're not a retailer. We're not a distributor. We're gonna ship it off to these guys and let them take care of it.
And it's a lot of fun to go in. You could go in there and have some tastings or something, and just enjoy watching the people taste it and just watch their expression to see how much they enjoy it.
Are you guys doing anything for the 250th anniversary of the United States coming up? Any special releases or anything?
Well, actually, we've got a 250th military for the Army. We've got a bottle out right now. We've had that out for a few months, celebrating that. And that's probably about all we've got out right now.
Yeah. What's different about that? Is it a little different mash bill or?
Not really a whole lot of difference. We just put a label out. Hold on just a minute and I'll show you.
All right. Ah, there it is. Nice. Green River Bourbon, 250th U.S. Army. Beautiful.
Yeah, we do quite a bit for the military. We try to show our appreciation to them. Mark Irwin, our CEO, was head of Special Forces for like 27 years. So we do a lot of military recognition and thanks for all they do for us. They keep us to where we can enjoy life the way we do.
That's for sure. Look at what they're doing right now. I mean, the success that they're having is unprecedented. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Pretty amazing. So what's next? What's next for Steve? Well, before we say that, I also want to point out that your wife is also in the Bourbon Hall of Fame.
She is. She's just a few weeks ago recognized the American Whiskey Hall of Fame. So we are the only couple that are both in the American Whiskey Hall of Fame and the only living couple that are in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. Wow. So we've, she was instrumental in developing the tour program that started at Maker's Mark and now is pretty much followed by most distilleries to some extent. She was instrumental in developing the Bourbon Trail and also the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. So she spent a lot of time showcasing distilleries and the trail and the festival.
That's fantastic. I mean, I've been on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and last year I wasn't able to make it to the Bourbon Festival, but this year I'm coming out, so I'm sure you'll be there.
Oh yeah, I'll be around. I'll be in the booth. I'll be doing some things around town, around Louisville. I'll be around different places.
I'll be looking for you. I'll definitely come and look for you and see if we can meet up face to face. That'd be fun.
Please do it. I'd love to meet you face to face. Another little fun adventure we've got going this year. We've just completed the first leg of our little RV tour around the country. We started out. It's about the middle of February. We took off in our RV. We went to Charlotte, North Carolina.
That's where I am now.
Spent a few days down there, and then we went down to Charleston, South Carolina. Spent a few more days. Went down to Jacksonville, Florida. Went across to Santa Rosa, Florida. Went on over to Pensacola, Florida. Ended up in New Orleans, Louisiana. There was a big whiskey festival down there. And then we came back home. So we just got back home about a week ago. Oh, so we spent about 4 or 5 weeks on the road. And we're going to be here for a few weeks. About the end of May, we're going to head out towards Wyoming. And we're going to go across Nebraska, stop in. I'm not sure where all we're going to stop in Nebraska. I know we're going to stop someplace in Omaha. And then go across Nebraska, make a few stops, end up out in Wyoming for a little bit. Then we're going to head on out to California. We're going to go up in the Napa Valley area for a little bit. go down the West Coast, make a few stops down San Francisco, Los Angeles, down in that area. And then come on back home. After we're home for a little bit, we'll be sometime in August. We're going to head up to Chicago area, spend a few days up there, come back to Kentucky for a little bit. Then we're going to go down in the Texas area, spend a little time, and come back to Kentucky for a while. And then about the 5th or 6th of, I think it's October, we're going to go down in New Mexico, spend some time down there. There's a big balloon festival down there.
Yeah.
We're going to make that. And then by then, if we're not completely wore out, we'll come back home for a little bit.
And are you introducing people to some of your work, some of your bourbon?
Oh yeah, that's the whole plan of it. We're spreading the word. We're trying to get people to drink bourbon again. They're kind of latched off on it for a little while. We want to get them back in the mood.
And so, how do you do that? I mean, when you go up to Chicago, what do you do?
We visit retail stores, do dinners, have promotional events. Just if there's a whiskey fest or any kind of a special event going on, we stop in and talk to people, tell them about what's going on in the industry, what's going on here at the distillery. Just talk about the industry and about our company, about the whole industry. This is an industry event, so we just talk about everything. Any questions they have about what's going on, we try to talk about it.
Wow. Well, next time you're in Charlotte, hopefully I'll be here. And I just moved here from Philadelphia, so now I'm in Charlotte, and that's why the shelf doesn't work, because I never tried it before.
Now not the front naked.
As if you're in Charlotte, or if you're down in Florida and I'm in Naples for some part of the year, or Miami's pretty close. Tampa's not too far away. Pensacola's pretty far away. Florida's a big state, but if you're down in my neighborhood, hit me up and we'll get together. We'll raise a glass.
Actually, I'll be down in Asheville. I've got a grandson getting married the 22nd or 3rd or something like that of September. I'll be down there during that time for the wedding. So I'll be down in the Asheville area. How far is that away from Charlotte?
I don't think it's very far. I think it's like 45 minutes to an hour.
I have no idea. I'm not that familiar with. I've been down to Charlotte a couple of times, but I'm not familiar with the surrounding areas.
I've been to Asheville and Charlotte, of course, but not in the same trip. Like, I've never gone back and forth, right? So I don't know exactly how far it is, but I know it's not too far away. But Asheville, I've been there. It's a cool little town. A lot of breweries and distilleries, and a lot of action going on. People hanging out. Very artsy, very cool, fun place to be. It's by a nice river, and it's just gorgeous there.
Okay. Well, I'll have to maybe do a little exploring while I'm down there.
Yeah, if you have any time to get together, let me know. I'd be glad to do that.
Okay.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us today. We really appreciate it, and we're very honored to have you with us, and say hello to your very special wife for us. And we're grateful to her as well for all of her contributions that she's made to the Bourbon Fest and the Bourbon Trail and all these different things. So we really thank you guys for all of that.
Well, it's been great talking with you today, hanging out with you. And if there's anything we can do on a barrel pick or anything, just you've got my contact. Get in touch with me, and we'll see if we can get something set up.
We'll do it. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Randy. Good talking to you, and you have a good day.
Hello again, Whiskey Shenanigans fans. It's time for the shenanigans portion of this episode. And recently been taking on some issues in the whiskey world, because there's some issues, and let's be honest about it. There's a bit of an inventory crisis going on. We talked about how Younger generations may not be embracing bourbon or whiskey the same way that the older generation did. And attitudes and tastes change over time. So there's a bit of an inventory crisis, and it presents a challenge in managing the long game in these uncertain times for the distillers. The bourbon business, it's not that much like a whole lot of other consumer product industries because the producers have to make enormous bets on what people will want to drink, not now, but a decade in the future. And once a barrel is filled, it can't just be paused. You can't push the pause button. The whiskey goes into the rickhouse today, and the bill for those decisions keeps coming year after year after year, sometimes in different economic conditions than even that the mash was made in. So there's a time lag economics here to, cause bourbon to pretty much always be playing catch up in the marketplace. Bourbon must age at least 2 years by law, and most flagship expressions range from 4 to 12. That long lag between production and sales creates both a financial and a strategic challenge for these distillers. Each new barrel ties up capital, wood, grain, labor, tax liability for years as it earns $1. In addition, there is the Angel's share, which many of you already know about, but the Angel's share is the amount of whiskey in each barrel that evaporates every single year. So some of your inventory is depleted and you didn't even get to sell it. With Kentucky distilleries now holding more than 16 million barrels of aging whiskey, the carrying costs alone exceed hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Every unbottled barrel is an inventory asset, but it's also a tax burden, according to boozemakers.com. Distillers don't simply stop production. That's not the answer here. You can't balance the books. The entire business just relies on aging inventory cycling through the system. So you can't just push stop. But the market doesn't really wait. And the tastes, as we said, they've been changing. Tariffs come and go. Who knows what Trump's going to do next? Nobody really knows. Trends could lean one way or another, maybe towards tequila, like right now. Cognac, maybe some non-alcoholic spirits can shake the forecasts that these guys did 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Those forecasts for what people were going to be drinking in the future once looked just rock solid. Now, not so much. So what's up with this current crunch? By this year, the bourbon world finds itself in yet another of its classic supply-demand mismatches. Producers scaled up aggressively, leading into and through COVID, feeding a global boom in demand. Those barrels are just now reaching maturity at precisely the moment when consumption is declining. Uh-oh. According to VinePair, Jim Beam even idled their historic Claremont distillery for all of this year, an unprecedented pause for a category leader, according to boozemakers.com, and we wrote an article on that. It's on our website as well. With all of these factors, the balance sheets of the distillers are looking increasingly illiquid, pun intended. Even though the inventory may be more valuable later, it can't simply be monetized anytime the distiller chooses. Bourbon is not simply a uniform commodity. The younger barrels may be in excess at the same time as the older barrels are in high demand. But somewhere in that pipeline of age, the python's going to have a big bulge in it, and there's going to be too much of one thing, and the prices are going to fall. The result probably isn't a collapse, but more of a correction. Well-stocked shelves, falling secondary prices, anxious accountants sitting around watching their inventory taxes mount. So one distiller, take a look at a couple of the big ones here, Heaven Hill and their segmentation strategy. They've perhaps created a really effective model for managing long-term volatility. Rather than betting the farm on one aging profile or one taste profile, they have built in a tiered architecture for their whiskey pipeline. Evan Williams serves as the high-volume, younger-aged workhorse brand. Elijah Craig and Parker's Heritage, on the other hand, absorbed the older stock, giving Heaven Hill valuable flexibility. A particularly good vintage of 8 to 12-year-old whiskey might become Elijah Craig's small batch. Exceptional barrels might go to Elijah Craig barrel proof or single barrel programs. This structure lets Heaven Hill allocate inventory dynamically according to maturity and also the market mood, selling what's ready without diluting the prestige of their top lines. That segmentation doesn't eliminate the pressure, but it sure turns aging variation, which was a big liability, into a marketing and pricing advantage for them. And what about Buffalo Trace? Don't they do the same thing? Similar, very similar. They follow a strategy, yet it's still unique from Heaven Hill in a lot of ways. They have their younger offerings from Benchmark and Buffalo Trace, their namesake, yet they can still play the long game on their heavily sought-after labels such as Weller's and Pappy Van Winkle. So, many of their brands have the same raw inputs, and the differentiation now becomes more about the aging, how the barrels are selected for bottling, and also, and don't forget this, key to Buffalo Trace, is final product positioning in the marketplace and creating a sense of scarcity for their higher-end bottles. What about the rest of the field? Other playbooks are emerging. Blending and flexibility is being seen by large producers such as Beam Suntory and Brown Forman, increasingly leaning on blending programs to absorb older stock. Knob Creek's new Blenders Edition is a prime example. 12-year-old marriage of a multiple batches that balances flavor and consistency with aging diversity, yet really, really good. Experimental finishes and limited releases. When started expressions risk oversaturation, distillers turn to innovation. Great example of this is our friend at Maker's Mark here. They did this one more recently, the 46. They decided to delve into stave or pieces of wood put into the barrel with the liquid called finishing. So stave finishing. And also the Bardstown Bourbon Collection blends repositioning maturing whiskey as something new, exciting, changing it. This Maker's Mark is built from the original Maker's Mark. It's just finished differently. Same great product, slightly different outcome. Then you got your private barrels and your contract sales. Surplus barrels increasingly flow to independent bottlers and craft labels, providing liquidity and brand visibility. It's an ecosystem that was once not very popular, kind of niche, but now really acts as a shock absorber for this industry. There's also a lot of consolidation and efficiency. Industry giants are seeking economies of scale. The proposed Brown-Forman Pernod-Ricard merger, for instance, would join American whiskey strength with global distribution, enabling a more nimble inventory management at the global scale instead of just within the United States. So here we are. We're trying to predict the future. We're trying to find out what's going to happen 10 years ahead, and we're trying to set up our aging and distilling processes to meet what's going to happen 10 years down the road. It's a hard challenge. Distillers have to forecast these tastes long in advance. Age preferences, price tolerances, environmental credentials, Gen Z, they're different. They like things differently. Hedging by these distillers is definitely widening. They're introducing younger bottled and bond labels, emphasizing grain to glass, like Bluegrass Distillers. We did them in a podcast recently. Or experimenting with alternative grains. So what's the path forward for all these guys? It's not a crisis. that's too strong of a word, but bourbon's long production cycle will always make it vulnerable to misjudged optimism about the future. The present oversupply is painful. It's healthy. That's good for you and me because prices will probably fall a little bit. We'll be able to get access to some really nice bourbons at some really great prices. And a market correction rewards distillers that plan not just for growth, but for the balance. What unites all these approaches together to the economic lag of bourbon is an acknowledgement that bourbon production, you can't simply fix it overnight. Tomorrow's most resilient bourbon makers will likely share the following three traits. Diversified aging programs spanning quick turn, long-term brands. Number 2, adaptive blending and finishing to align old barrels with the current demand. And number 3, financial discipline, strong reserves to survive lean years without shutting down stills. And before we wrap this up, I want to give a shout out to Cask X. We did a podcast with them as well. They have come up with a really nice solution for some of these distillers, another way for them to monetize their barrels sooner than later. So Cask X will buy this stuff when it looks like white lightning, and they'll keep it in the rick houses until they're ready to take it out. And investors will invest in that. Investors will buy this, and they'll end up with this. It's not a bad investment. So a truly unique approach, very interesting. Thus, the most successful distillers will not necessarily be the ones that can predict the future the best or the most accurately, but rather those that can transform the challenge into a strategic opportunity, similar to what Heaven Hill and Buffalo Trace have done. Never forget the romance of time between this and this has always been bourbon's secret ingredient. The challenge now is just making sure that time doesn't go from being an ally to being an adversary. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Whiskey Shenanigans. Hello again, Whiskey Shenanigans fans. I am here today with Amit and Marcin, and they are the founders of Mission Craft Cocktails. And we're going to learn a little bit about their journey, which has been quite exciting. And we're really excited to have you guys on today.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.